I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
CJ, where were you when Canadian soccer history was being made on Sunday?
I was right in this hotel room. I'm down in Florida for the GMs meetings, and I was getting updates from my dad. So I didn't actually see it. I didn't have a chance even yet to watch it. He said the stadium was going bananas, which I would expect. I've seen the hype building for that team, but unfortunately, being in the States, I wasn't able to watch the game.
Even though you weren't able to watch all of it, I watched most of it. I had to go to an event partway through. What was your feeling and sentiment after you had heard that Canada got the job done, and for the first time since 1986, you were probably 4 or 5, Canada is qualified for the FIFA World Cup, the men's side, because we know how well the women do.
It's insane to me. How do you put it? What's impressed me most about this team is that they did it so decisively. They didn't lose a game, and I know they lost the previous game, but they didn't lose for 18 months. I don't know. You see sort of upset things happen in sports, and they can make for cute stories, but you understand it's not sustainable. This is an old reference, but when Switzerland beat Canada in the 2006 Olympics and knocked them out, Canada had 52 shots in the game or something. And so, yeah, you got goalied, and, it's a big thing. But, and Swiss hockey's, come on, don't get me wrong, but it's not it wasn't a sign that Switzerland had arrived necessarily. Maybe it was a little bit. This feels like Canada actually, earn their place at the table. And that's what I think is really cool. And I fully expect them to be a hard team to play against in the tournament. Obviously, I'm not predicting them to win the World Cup, but I do think that they could surprise some teams or pull off an upset or two when they're there. And so what I like about it is that it appears sustainable, it appears legitimate, and it's not just, we fluked our way in. I mean, there was nothing lucky or fluky about their performance during this qualifying campaign.
Oh, man. It's something that will go down, I think, as one of the more magical sporting events, phenomenons that at least people from my generation, your generation too, a lot of people can just kind of look at. They did not fluke their way through. And look, I get we're a hockey podcast, we're starting off with soccer, but we had to start off with that because that's Canadian sports history. I'm wearing my Alphonso Davies shirt because I had to. Today's just, I feel really good today.
You've got an extensive wardrobe.
I do.
I feel like you've got a shirt or a hat for every occasion. No matter what's going on, you got something relevant to kind of. I got to up my game, man. I got about 7 outfits.
I mean, the one you have, I think, is pretty well suited for what you're in Florida for, even though you're going to be likely just in a hotel room or building or wherever you're going to be at for these GM meetings in Florida, right? That's how it works. How does it work, actually, just being a media member? Is it kind of like what it was for the Board of Governors meeting? You're just kind of staking out a hotel, just waiting for the guys to come out and get what you can get? Yeah,
it's a little bit like that. It's a strange event to cover. I'll use air quotes, to be here working, because we're lucky. TSN's put us up at a hotel where the meetings themselves are happening, so logistics are very easy. Obviously, just go down to wherever they're meeting in the hotel, whatever conference room, and wait outside. But often when I've covered these over the years, I wasn't staying at the resort, so you're in the hotel that isn't your hotel, but you got no room to leave your stuff, or you just want to take some time during the day where you're not standing outside a door. And the league is pretty accommodating. Though often I haven't heard actually the specific schedule of events for the meetings that are happening here today and Tuesday, but often Gary Bettman will do a formal press availability with Bill Daly, take questions on a variety of matters in addition to what they've discussed. The GMs are pretty good at stopping to talk, but it's a little weird. It's not it's covering a game is more straightforward how everything works. This is a little bit. It's not all handed to you on a plate, and so we're down here working our sources, working our relationships to find out what's happening, and obviously doing the TV hits and all that on that.
So let's at least try to make sense of what's out there. And I know our good buddy Pierre LeBrun kind of reported on some things that could be discussed. And one thing that already was discussed before the weekend, and in hindsight, I'm kind of glad we didn't discuss it on the Thursday show when we were still kind of getting over the post-deadline funnies, the ridic stuff. The idea that the NHL salary cap being extended into the playoffs could be in play. Pierre LeBrun, among other things, saying that that is something that could be discussed amongst GMs today and tomorrow. We know about how teams like Vegas and Chicago in the past and Tampa, Vegas might have to do that this year, but Chicago and Tampa Bay have used LTIR as a way to obviously just kind of exceed the cap and eventually get to a point where they could let players who are on LTIR be available to them in time for the postseason. I'd like to know your thoughts on the idea that the salary cap, they're trying to imagine a world where it would work in the playoffs. Like, that's just kind of a weird thing I'm not necessarily used to. And I get we're only a couple years into the salary cap era, and this part of it being a part of the game.
Well, first of all, don't let this suit fool you. We're not completely over the post-trade deadline sillies because, I still don't have my brain power back at where I would like it to be. Like, I don't know why. Okay. I still just feel like a little spacey. So anything could still come out of my mouth. Ridic might make another appearance on this
Over
podcast.
Under how many Ridics on this show?
Well, I don't even normally say that. I don't even know why I said it once. And then the way you reacted to it, and then it's taken on a life of its own. So,
it just came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, you just made up the word ridic like you're just some teenager.
So now I feel like I need to drop that Easter egg every once in a while in there for like the real ones,
Yeah.
So yeah, Ridic ain't being retired, and Goofy ain't being retired yet either.
No.
But anyway, onto the salary cap. I think this is what's interesting about this particular discussion is it's being driven by a handful of GMs. So, sometimes what gets discussed at these meetings, it comes sort of from the league down. And I think, for example, if we get into the Evgeny Dadonov trade and the reversal and how those no trade clauses all work, like that's probably more of a league down initiative because they're trying to correct, something that happened once and prevent it from happening in the future where they've had to reverse a trade. Whereas this is GMs thinking that this is unfair or that it's not right that some teams have been able to basically ice playoff rosters that are $8 or $9 million above what the salary cap was in the regular season. And so I can't really predict where it's going to go because it's coming from the bottom up. And I suppose if they build a compelling enough argument or build enough consensus, potentially we could see a tweak or change. I don't know if that's necessarily likely at this meeting. I mean, I think sometimes it's a rather complex issue. And I think sometimes it has to be considered over a period of time before you actually see some kind of change to the system. But this could be a start of that, right? Just because it doesn't happen Tuesday where they come out and say, okay, we're making this change, doesn't mean it dies here either. And, fundamentally the problem is, so I think one of the ideas that will be discussed is, okay, you can carry a roster in the playoffs of any amount, but the 20 players you put in uniform would have to be cap compliant based on what their hits were in the season. So you can't really benefit in the way that you have in the past, but that's loaded with problems because let's just say for the interest of this discussion, we take the Tampa situation where Kucherov makes $9 million and plus. So his salary didn't count against Tampa's cap essentially last year. Mm-hmm. You add him in the playoffs. So then what are they supposed to do? Like sit out a $5 million player to stay under that limit? Like it's not necessarily fair to the players either, right? Like the players might have grievances with this. And so remember too, this is a CBA matter, so the league can't just change it. I mean, the NHLPA would have to sign off on it too. And I'm not saying the NHLPA, there's nothing really in front of them yet. So I'm just anticipating where, issues they might raise. These aren't necessarily issues that they have done so already. And the other one is you could maybe have injuries or a series of events happen where you can't ice a full team in the playoffs. And, that happens obviously time to time. We've seen it in the regular season. Vegas had it a lot last year. And it, it hurts their ability in those games, but I don't know you really want to see that when it comes playoff time. I think that's not great. And there's probably about 100 other things that I haven't even considered that make this difficult. And so I think it's unlikely to change here just based on my sense of things. But again, this is an organic conversation being had among some of the most powerful people in the game at an important meeting. And so I think it's going to be interesting, just, I guess, for me, talking to the guys as they come out of the room about how they thought that discussion went, if it still has more legs, if there's maybe a few things suggested that have changed some minds. I mean, that will, I think we'll be gauging that more than looking for a specific change that happens in these 2 days.
Do we have a sense of which GMs in particular are actively pushing for this? Like, I've heard up to about 10 GMs in this league, almost a third of this league could be like asking for this.
I'm not fully sure the list at this point. Like, I know some of them, and some of them don't want to be publicly revealed until I think this discussion has happened. And so, I'm always honest with this pod. I don't hold back, but in this very specific circumstance, I'm going to see how they package it and come out. Because the other thing too is I definitely don't know the full list. I don't know everybody who feels this way. I don't know that it's fair to name the one or two that I know plan to push this discussion, because there's probably 7 others that have their back on it. And so the short answer is I don't have a full picture of that, but I think it's not going to be a big giant secret after the discussion happens. I think that they didn't want to have it shot down before they even had a chance to have the discussion. And so, that's all I can really say on that.
That's fine. I think just for the salary cap, because of the limits that have been put on teams as a result of it, there's already so many, like the LTIR thing is already a loophole GMs have to push through in order to make this work. Like, why add this thing in the playoffs? I guess fine to maybe limit other teams, but for all those other ones who are in a situation like a Tampa or a Vegas right now, like, why punish them further for, trying to play under the rules and finding a loophole that works? Like, I'm just a bystander here, but I'm not really in favor of that idea working out. But that's just me speaking of my own opinion.
Well, it's kind of my view, because I think what we have to actually acknowledge here, because I think it gets lost a little bit in the fan conversation on this topic. It's not like this happens all the time, and like, a lot of things have to come together for it even to be possible. Like, first of all, players have to be injured. Like, these aren't invented injuries. I think maybe where the spirit of it could be challenged is, you could argue, could Nikita Kucherov have played one regular season game before the playoffs? But obviously the reason I bring that up is because he couldn't play that one regular season game because they wouldn't have been able to activate him and be cap compliant to do it. But,
right.
He did have hip surgery. There's a very specific timeline. I think it's 4 months for hip surgery. Like, that's common, other players have had this, and he was out about that time. So, and so it definitely benefited them to get that player back. But the other thing is, it's not, very few players could miss an entire season and be great in the playoffs like Kucherov was. Like it wasn't a foregone conclusion that would all work in their favor. And so I think sometimes you have to step back and be like, all right, we're really talking about a few isolated cases. Obviously, lots of teams right now are operating in long-term injured reserve. I think 16, I looked yesterday and counted on Cap Friendly. But, I do think that this isn't like being widely abused or something. So I'm with you. That's ultimately why I'm not sure, unless there's some tweak that's maybe smaller that I'm just missing here. I don't know that you have to overhaul the whole system for these few isolated cases.
You mentioned Evgeny Dadonov earlier. It seems as if one thing that could come up in discussions is the idea or the way no trade lists have been documented or compiled. Of course, Dadonov, we spoke about his situation on the last few podcasts that we've done, and he's turned himself into an indispensable player for the organization since. What can you tell us about this topic?
Well, I do think this is where you'll see some kind of change. I mean, there's an obvious one. Some sort of third-party oversight or involving someone else in it, whether it's the league or the NHLPA or both, I think just makes a lot of sense. It protects everybody's interest here. Like, this is not a good look for the league, right? It's not, and obviously a really crappy situation for the player who literally did nothing wrong. He had a no-trade negotiated into his contract. He followed the rules of that contract and filed his list. He had 10 teams on that list. He got traded somehow to one of those teams. It's and anyway, what a crazy set of events. And I think what it's done is spotlight a hole in the system that these lists do get passed from an agent to a team. Let's face it. We all use email. I'm terrible on email, by the way. Like, never email. Text me, call me. If you email me,
That's
might get.
That's what I got to sell you, bro.
I'm just saying, I'm so bad at email because you get so much crap in your email. It's just hard to manage it, right? And you get busy. Anyway, long story short, you can imagine an email going missing, or it's not hard for this process to break down, and it only has to happen once or twice, and you could have a result like the one we had. So, having it to be registered or filed with the league, I think makes sense. It would protect the players' interests. The only real concern is the more people that get those emails, the more people like me that seem to get them flipped to their email. And I do respect that because, those are personal choices for the players. Honestly, I think most no trades in the league look similar. I actually saw the Wally and Mathot show. They had Bobby Ryan on and Mark Mathot, and they were talking about how they would do their no trade lists, and it was a similar strategy. Basically, anywhere where you pay higher taxes, you have it on the list. I mean, again, there might be some other personalized stylizations to that, but the Canadian teams, if you play for a Canadian team, you pay more taxes, so they're on there. If you're California, New York based teams, more taxes. And so, but anyway, I get why players would want those lists to be public, because then it looks like maybe they hate the city. Like, why wouldn't you want to go to California? It's beautiful there. And then he's got to come out and say, well, because I care about how much money's in my bank account more than where I live or whatever. So yeah, that's the only potential drawback. But I think it's such an easy fix. And everybody that looks at this Dadonov situation would look at it and say, this isn't good. Like, we can't have this happening again, because it's a bad one. And there's still a question, are they going to trade him again? They could. Then his season's over. I mean, what a weird circumstance, but he's on a heater. He's got goals in 4 straight games. And, it seems that he's taking it in stride. I saw the interview he did and didn't, I guess shit happens sometimes, right? Ridiculous shit happens.
It does. I think it's probably if it's not the best story, it's still the weirdest story to come out of the NHL right now. If getting that, other guys could have easily just been like, well, fuck this, I'm not going to play. But Dadonov, not only is he playing, he's winning them games in key points of the season. Vegas needs these wins.
Imagine he leads them to the playoffs. He goes on this crazy run and they make the playoffs because this trade was reversed, or in part because the trade was reversed. What a story that would be.
That it might be it would go down as one of the weirder stories of what has already been a bizarre, eventful 2021-2022. That would just, it wouldn't go down as the biggest story, obviously, but it would just be one of the weirdest ones to end off the year, no doubt.
Well, how weird was his week? So last Monday, it's trade deadline day. Not the most comfortable day for a lot of players, just because there's rumors and stuff, and he'd been in some of the rumors, so I'm sure he was aware of it. He's in Minnesota, I believe they were, with the team. I believe at one point he's in the dressing room, after he's traded, saying to his teammates, I got to no trade day Anaheim. This can't be true. He's got to leave the team and fly back to Vegas then. And Wednesday, the trade gets reversed. Thursday, he plays. Saturday, he plays and scores the overtime winner. What a weird 5 days that must have been. I can't even really imagine that. And obviously, I think he's got kids. I'm pretty sure he's probably got a partner. That would be uncomfortable. We all just talk about trades on our podcast and hey, this is cool, they're changing it. But there's a whole reality to moving your house and finding a new place to live, or living out of a hotel, or maybe being apart from your partner and kids for the remainder of that season while they stay where they're set up. There really is a whole human side of it that's brutal. And so, yeah, good for him. I actually kind of find him a sympathetic character now. I'm cheering for him, because it would be a really cool story, and sort of personally, I'm sure it would feel nice if he now becomes indispensable to Golden Knights and they can't trade him.
Absolutely. And it's not like he did anything wrong.
No.
It's not his fault. Vegas, Ottawa are much more to blame. I mean, Anaheim in one, they're not to blame either. I mean, Evgeny Dadonov's just kind of helpless in this situation.
Well, and the one thing I'm wondering if we'll find out here at the GMs meeting is like what the league found out about where the communication broke down. Because, it's hilarious we did that segment on how the trade calls work.
Yeah.
The day before the deadline, because literally like the first thing that happens on those calls is like you make sure that that there's no contractual reason that a trade can't go through, or that the team has no salary cap issues or whatever, like that would prevent it from being a compliant trade essentially. And so they had a trade call on July 28th when he got traded from Ottawa to Vegas. Like, how was it not disclosed that he had this list? It doesn't sound like it was. And so, like, I don't even know if you can blame Vegas. Again, I got to find out more. But if Vegas didn't know he had a no trade list, I mean, how can they be at fault either? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if they thought that he didn't file his 10 teams and it was voided in his contract, because that does happen a lot. Like, there's numerous instances where players don't file that list on time for whatever reason, or their agents don't, and you basically don't enact that clause in your deal, or trigger it. So if for whatever reason Vegas believed he didn't do that, so anyway, I'd be curious to see what the NHL says about what it learned about that process, and if look, there might be penalties for someone. I don't know for sure, but if they found anything was done intentional here, I think that they would want to put some penalty on that person.
Siege, what about an internal database for GMs, or agents or whatever? You just have everyone's no trade lists in this database for like every player, and you could just go there. It's only accessible to those guys. Kind of like how we're able to go on a cap friendly website and see that a guy has no trade list. Like, why can't GMs kind of sort of have their own internal cap friendly website that's only accessible to them, where they could find that stuff out?
Well, I believe they would have access to all the player contracts. So you could look at the contract and see, hey, Evgeny Dadonov, if he files, he's got a 10-team no trade list that has to be filed before July 1st, or however it's worded in his deal, something like that. That would be public knowledge. But what wouldn't be public knowledge is if he filed that list on time or not, and if he actually sort of used it. And I'm guessing the players probably don't want all the teams to know which teams they don't want to go to, like, publicly, that in such a way. And so, because definitely if like you have 30 or 50 people with access to those things, I mean, I don't want to out anyone here, but people like me could get our hands on that information then really damn easy. It's sort of like the waiver list, right? Like, the league doesn't publish the waiver list, but it goes to enough people that, I can bug someone I know to send it to me. And that's how the sausage is made. If you're following my Twitter account at 2:02 Eastern most days in the part of the season when waivers are in place, that's how that's happening. I'm bugging someone to send me a list. And so I would think that it would be no different if there's a certain player that, for whatever reason, maybe there's news value to knowing who's on their list, then, someone whose job it is to get news would get that news. So I think that they'll keep it pretty tight, whatever they do. But, it also does make sense, though, to have some kind of formal registry. Like when that trade call happens, it can't be a mystery to the people involved in the trade whether the player has that list or not.
I know you like Manscaped for your balls, but this news is actually not for your balls, but it has everything to do with Manscaped. They are launching their Ultra Premium Collection, and it is not for your private parts. We're talking about a leveled up hygiene routine with your favorite manly scent. It is an all-in-one skin and hair care kit for the everyday man, and it covers you from head to toe. Literally, Manscaped is trusted below the waist. Now trust them with the rest. Join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping. All you have to do is just insert the code CHRIS21. I mean, it's Chris Johnston's name and the number 21. By the way, the package, we've got Manscaped Premium Deodorant. Again, not for your balls. It's really just for your armpits. The deodorant dries clear, is aluminum free, and smells like their signature scent. Hydrating body spray, body wash, 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner, and you get a free gift, a 3-pack set of lip balm that is made up of ingredients like vitamin E, peppermint, and eucalyptus oil to keep those chappers feeling moist. I lose lip balms all the time. A 3-pack of lip balm would be great for me. That's 4 products plus a free gift in the Ultra Premium Collection. All of these products are also cruelty-free, paraben-free, vegan-friendly, and dye-free. The best ingredients with zero compromise. 20% off plus free shipping with the code Chris21 at manscaped.com. 20% off plus free shipping with the code Chris21 at manscaped.com. The power of attraction is now in a bottle and a few other fun products, thanks to Manscaped. If you're the type of person who's always thinking about new business ideas or wondering what's the next side hustle I should spin up, you should check out the podcast My First Million. The hosts Sean Puri and Sam Parr have each built 8-figure businesses and sold them to Amazon and HubSpot. And each week, they brainstorm business ideas that you can start tomorrow. These can be side hustles that can make you a few grand a month, a big billion-dollar idea, or anything in between. So be sure to check out My First Million on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you, by the way, for letting me know how the waiver list thing goes, because for years I always thought, like, well, where is everyone getting these waiver lists? How does everyone know? And I had no clue where to even find that stuff. I learned something today.
I burned through so much like capital, like asking favors for that. But, it can be interesting, especially as you're getting close to the deadline. Like there's huge news value to that. The waivers period goes away now. I mean, someone could be on waivers for terminating their contract now, but the general waivers process is not in place. But yeah, it's a pain in the ass. Let's call it as it is. I don't know why the league doesn't publish it, but you got to work with the circumstances you got. I haven't wasted any energy on that. I just waste energy getting that list and tweeting, trying not to spell the names wrong.
Yeah, that's good.
It comes all the capitals, like the way you get it. And
yeah.
So you can't copy paste it, or I can't, the way I get it. And then, but you want to get it out quickly. So there's probably a lot of autocorrect reporter Chris bad names on those waiver tweets I make. Cause usually you're trying to do it quickly. Sometimes you're in the middle of whatever you're doing in your day at 2:00. Like it's not like I'm sitting in a calm hotel room either. So that explains why if you see Elliot or me or whoever publishing that wrong is because it's not a copy paste document and you're trying to get it out quick.
You learn something new every day with this podcast. Speaking of learning stuff, what about the salary cap? What about that itself? Is it going to go up? I think you said it was going to go up by a little bit for next season.
Yeah, report on insider trading. It's going up to $82.5 million, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's another player, right? Or it certainly will help teams account for some raises. And I think in a weird way, it's also a signal, hey, that maybe we're starting to see the sun on the other side of that pandemic, like that business is getting stronger again because it's directly tied to revenues. I don't know what the league revenues will be this season yet. We'll probably get that kind of projection during these meetings again, like a refreshed one, because they gave us one in December, I believe over north of $5 billion, but immediately after the board meeting in December is when you had the Canadian attendance restrictions came back in. We had all those games disrupted by COVID. And so, I don't know how much that will have hurt the business in the meantime here, but it's a sign the business is getting better. And, at some point there should be a big jump, but it's not going to be for a number of years because remember, the players are basically paying back the debt they accrued to the owners, or they took from the owners during the pandemic because they kept getting paid while basically the league was making no money. So, it's going to take some time, but at some point we're going to get a jump to like 100 million. And that'll be interesting because it'll be, when you see everyone get cap space, you might see some funny contracts handed out.
And that's going to make your job all the more interesting with all that money going around for free agency, trade deadline, $100 million. It's a couple years away, but if this podcast is still around then, if the trade deadline we saw the other day was wild, I had a lot of fun.
Like selfishly, if you're into the transactions of the sport, if you're into the trades and stuff, like it truly having a flat cap for 3 years is hard because there's inflationary pressure on the system because essentially players get paid more over time. all the, like, a number of contracts that are being played on today were agreed to. Like, the Leafs are a classic example of this. The entire bet the Leafs made with the money they handed to Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, and William Nylander was that the cap was going to keep going up by $3 or $4 or $5 million a year, which was totally normal at the time they signed those deals. Where their cap situation has become a massive challenge is that didn't end up happening because there was a pandemic that, I'm not sure you could criticize them for not seeing coming, because I mean, I was covering games on like March 10th and I didn't see it coming, and the league shut down like 4 days later, or I didn't fully grasp what was coming anyway. So they actually had it. This is the first time the GMs are meeting in person since the first week of March 2020. And I was told by someone in that meeting that the only discussion related to COVID at that March meeting, again, we're talking the first week of March, the season shut down, March 12th was paused?
Yeah, like around that, March
12th
around that day.
That was paused. So like they're meeting a week before, and the only discussion related to COVID was that they were having some supply chain issues for sticks for companies that were doing things in China, essentially. And so they were like talking about supply chain issues for hockey sticks. And that was a week before the whole league shut down. I mean, and I'm not saying that as a point of criticism. I think it does underline like how few of us truly saw all this coming, and it's obviously had massive effects in all areas of our life. But it's had massive effects on the business of hockey too. So it does feel like this is the first time they met in person since the GMs. And again, another small step towards normalcy along with that cap going up.
Any discussions on the upcoming World Cup of Hockey?
Yeah, we'll get an update on that. And, my TSN colleague, Darren Dreger, reported last week, which I think is kind of interesting, that they're going to have a play-in tournament as part of it, kind of the summer before. And so, the reason we had Team North America and Team Europe, which ended up working out pretty good for that event in a pinch, was that they organized that thing not long before it was held. And so there wasn't proper time to have, to decide which of, say, like countries like Germany or Austria or Switzerland, or, how many of those should get automatic entry and how many should play each other, Denmark, to take in the final one or two spots. So there's going to be some play-in portion to this, but we don't have any real details on that yet. And, I know there were some meetings held in Europe last week with the IIHF and the NHL. And I suspect a lot of what's being discussed there is how this will all work. And this is going to be a different World Cup. Nothing has been committed to yet that I'm aware of, but I've been told it's very likely to be multiple cities. The entire 2016 event was held in Toronto at Scotiabank Arena. And, this might be more worldly. Let's see, like, will games be held in Europe? It would make sense maybe for that play-in tournament if you're talking about European countries. And so, there'll definitely be an update given to the GMs about that. I don't know how much will be shared with the reporters, but that's why I'm here, man. We're going to try to figure it out.
Just hoping we can get more stuff. Also, anything to do with officiating and the Department of Player Safety?
Wow, officiating, I have to look at it's always discussed. Like, what's crazy, or crazy maybe not the best term, but like what's wild is some GMs come to this like with specific examples from their games of like things they didn't like, which is pretty granular when you think about it. Because I mean, there's 1,300 games played each season or whatever. So like, of course, there's going to be one thing in one game that didn't go well, and of course, much more than that. So that'll be discussed. I think that there's going to be discussion too from the hockey operations side about coaches' challenges in the video review, and basically, my understanding is they're not going into that thinking something's wrong, but they want to have a discussion. Like, does anyone have issues? Is this working as it's intended? Should we be reviewing more things? Maybe I think that's always the fine line the NHL is walking, is they don't want to slow the game down where everything gets reviewed, but you want to be right? And that's not an easy line to draw in a sport like hockey and keep the game flow going. So maybe something will come out of that. And there could be a surprise or two too. I mean, this isn't all scripted, if you know what I'm saying. So, we see the agenda a little bit, but there's some of it's very general what the terms are, and the discussion that comes out of that could be a little more colorful.
It's not scripted. It's not rigged. I just want to make sure we get that joke out the way. I don't know. I just want because people like to say stuff in sports is rigged all the time. Is there anything else from the meetings that hasn't really been put out there as something that could be discussed, or did we really go through everything?
Well, that's as much as I know right now. I mean, the meetings are literally just getting started as we're recording this. So, there'll be more certainly by our show Thursday, I'm sure. But that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, other than that, I'm just trying not to get a sunburn and looking for some downtime. I got my run in this morning early. It's nice to be. I left Toronto. It was snowing. I don't know what the weather is like still today, but it's nice to be like in shorts and actually be able to, get a little sweat on out in the sun.
Are you ready for some questions from the good people on Twitter and Discord?
Yes, just no middle name questions. I'm sorry, Leafy. I see you in my timeline.
Leafy is just banging on whatever pane of glass, asking to be freed, and they can only be freed if you reveal that damn middle name from Jeff Carter, whatever the hell it is. Anyway, by the way, thank you to everyone who sends in questions for Ask CJ, whether on Twitter or on Discord. This one is from
wild.
What's wild?
Sometimes I forget to put it out there, right? Like depending what I'm doing. It's like,
Yes.
So like sometimes I put it out on like Saturday night or Sunday morning, and Sunday I'm in crunch time because I have to file my Inside the NHL column on Sunday. So that's if you ever see that the call for questions go out on a Sunday, I've forgotten on the Saturday essentially. But everyone always steps up. Like that's what I'm amazed by. Like somehow, I mean, and I like literally laugh out loud at these questions. Like some of them are hilarious. Like some of them, there's no chance I could ever put in a newspaper because they're more statements than questions, but I still find them hilarious. So thank you for everyone who steps up because it's actually one of the more fun parts of my week.
Here's a ridiculous question to start from JB's17 off Discord. If tomatoes are a fruit, is ketchup a smoothie? That's so weird.
It's hard to argue against that. That's pretty sound logic.
I mean, it's not frozen or cold. It's supposed to be cold.
You don't keep ketchup in the fridge?
You do. You do. You do.
And it's pretty sweet, ketchup, which, smoothies tend to be sweet. Fruit tends to be sweet.
That's true.
Ketchup is a smoothie. That's a new one, but I'm in. I'm buying what you're selling.
Oh my God. So you think there are more wheels than doors, which by the way, I'm reconsidering that opinion. I think there's more doors than wheels now. I thought about this. And you think it's Yanni over Laurel, and now you think ketchup is a smoothie.
Yeah. I'm standing by it.
Okay, it is 100% Chris Johnston Show approved. Ketchups or smoothies. I have another one off Discord from This Is Colin. Going back to the Harry Sateri talk, can he just not report to any other team except the Leafs?
Well, he could, but then he doesn't get paid. So, like, his contract belongs to the Arizona Coyotes now, even though he signed it with the Leafs. And he could choose not to come, but then he can't play in the NHL or get paid the salary he's supposed to get. So as much as maybe he didn't like how this went down and he would have liked to have joined the team and, with the possibility with the uncertainty in the Leafs net where he's playing playoff games, and obviously Arizona's not in that situation this year. All he could do is not report and not get paid. And, I'm guessing the other side of this for him, it's not just for this year, right? He sees this as a path potentially back to the NHL, full stop. So, I mean, look, we might only see him play 2 or 3 or 4 games, but if they're good enough, someone will probably take a flyer on him. Maybe he signs with the Leafs in the offseason, right? The Leafs, he won't need waivers if he signs a contract with them in July when he's a free agent. So, maybe he'll still find his way to that Toronto crease one way or another, but he doesn't have a whole ton of options right now.
This one is from Carlos, again off Discord. Is it true CJ was going to be traded to Game Over Montreal, but he had a modified 10 podcast NTC that was not disclosed when registering the trade at the SDPN Central Registry, so Commissioner Adam Wilde had to step in to void the trade? Was this not a matter for the SDPN PA to step in as well?
It's very true. And the reason I had them on my no trade list is because I can't work nights. Like, I don't know how Berkshire does it. Like, I don't
You
always
should have told
make it
him
to the
before
end.
that one show, where we were supposed to be on together.
Yeah, well, we'll be on again. I can do it as a one-off, but I could not do every game. Like, I think that's batshit. Like, full peace, full respect. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I don't think I could do that. That's like, how do you not get loopy talking about the same team over and over and over again after every game?
That's also a question you could be asking some other people on this network about, but I'm just going to leave that there. How about another question instead from Grim Reaper 1316 off of Discord? First off, great job on the podcast. Love the content you put out. CJ, what are your thoughts on the Buffalo Sabres heading towards this offseason? Are they looking into a trade or free agency for Owen Power's defense partner?
Definitely. I mean, Kevin Adams wanted to make that trade at this deadline if he could, but certainly it's high on his radar of things to do. And I think what's interesting about Buffalo is they're playing pretty well the last little while, and I imagine for that fan base, you've seen it so many times, you almost don't want to get your hopes up, but like there's reason to get your hopes up if you're a Buffalo Sabres fan. Like, they're playing hard. They've got some young players. Peyton Krebs has come up since that trade from Vegas. Obviously, Alex Tuch has been good for them. You have an Owen Power coming. You're going to have another high draft pick. Like, you start to see the makings of a team. I think they also this offseason are going to need to figure out what they're doing with their goaltending a little bit. I think that's an area that they'll look to add. But that and a defense partner for Owen Power and a little bit of time and growth for your young players. And maybe the Sabres have finally turned the corner. I think it's long overdue. Talk about a great fan base. Like, those poor people have been kicked where for a good decade. So I hope for their sake it is the sign of better days ahead, because it's a great hockey market and they haven't had much great hockey to watch.
We've used the analogy of Charlie Brown running towards the football that Lucy's holding, and Lucy pulls the football every time. We've used that for the Leafs. The Sabres, that is a franchise that has endured that over and over. I genuinely hope for their sake things get better and they could at least be competitive for a playoff spot, because that franchise has endured way too much. The
weird thing is the Leafs were the Sabres, right? In that they didn't make the playoffs forever. Then they started making the playoffs regularly, but they couldn't win a round. So, like, the Leafs are have been through what the Sabres went through, and now they've had this stretch of 5 or 6 years where they haven't been able to win a playoff round after finally becoming a good team. Sports are cruel, man. That's why we love them.
That is true. Let's get to Caper Malcolm's question off Twitter. Does the NHL have independent doctors to monitor players on LTIR? Do they check monthly, or are teams on the honor system?
Definitely not the honor system. There's been numerous cases in the past where teams have to submit a ton of documentation of what the nature of the injuries are. There have been at least one case that we know of where Joffrey Lupul had to go and have an independent visit with a doctor at the NHL's request. I don't remember all the circumstances around that, but I think he put out something on his Instagram page once kind of hinting that he wasn't injured. And so that compelled the league to act. It was something like that. He put up a post that he later deleted, airing some frustration at the Leafs, in the Leafs direction. And then he had to have that independent. So, yeah, I think the league does a lot of work on this. Like, the league is sensitive to the issue in the sense that they don't want teams to be misusing it either. And so I think that there's a pretty rigorous process there. The thing everyone's got to remember is hockey players play through crazy amounts of pain. And, like, I actually don't think we should celebrate it in the sport as much as we do, but it's a lot. If you have a long career, even if you have a shorter career, a lot of stuff happens. And so there's lots of people injured, and sometimes those injuries are long-term. So again, I feel like there's a sort of a conspiracy element to this at times, but it's way less conspiratorial than is ever played up. Like, I think a lot of guys are injured, and the league makes sure of it because they want to protect the spirit of the CBA.
This next one from Benjamin Crozier, or Crozier. Apologies if I don't have the name right. There's no way Ken Holland survives this season, right? After, not last night, but over the weekend, their embarrassing loss to the Flames. his time has to be limited. Steve Dangle wouldn't have let in 9 goals last night. Just embarrassing.
This is an example. Yeah, like, is that a question or a statement?
I think the beginning part might have been the question, but I think he kind of aired some frustration after that.
I mean, Ken Holland has a contract, and there's still very much a world where the Oilers make the playoffs and win a round or two. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. So, yeah, I think that there's a way he survives this season. It will – maybe the spirit of the question that's being aired there is if they miss the playoffs, that could be a fireable offense potentially. But, you know, he's one of the better paid GMs, and the owner would want to be sure about that before ever making that move. So it's hard to be a GM in a Canadian city. You're getting a lot of scrutiny. But, yeah, I do think there's a way he survives it. To like answer it directly, of course, wouldn't surprise me to see him back next year.
This one from Jaborki on Twitter. Why is Jared Bednar not talked about more and in higher consideration for the Jack Adams Trophy?
Because everyone knows Colorado's good. And so that's not to say he isn't a good coach, but, you know, first of all, I don't vote on the Jack Adams Trophy award. So, you know, it's not one that I have any influence on, and I don't then know what everyone thinks. But we've seen it over time. The team that overachieves tends to be the coach that wins. So, like John Cooper, I don't believe has won it. And, you know, he was going to be Team Canada's coach in the Olympics. That didn't happen if it was an NHL tournament. You know, he's obviously won the last 2 Stanley Cups. He's done nothing but win, really, since he took over the Lightning. They missed the playoffs that 1 year when they had a crazy amount of injuries. But, like he helped turn that franchise's fortunes around. He's the longest tenure coach in the league. So it tends to be the guys who coach great teams don't win it. That's just a fact of the matter. And so I guess you could make an argument for Bednar because when he took over the Avalanche, they were in a bad way. But you know, they just have a lot of good players. I think he is a good coach. Don't confuse that. But yeah, that's my best guess at why.
2-time finalist for the Jack Adams Trophy. That's John Cooper. But yes, you're right. He has never won that honor. From Hoctor the Love Doctor on Twitter. Does Evgeny Dadonov deserve a case of Bobby Margarita for the game winner Saturday in overtime against Chicago?
I'd send him 2 cases of Uncle Bobby's Margarita mix. Very tasty. Coming to the LCBO soon in Ontario. And I just want my next one to be chilled because the first one I drank warm because it sat in the studio all day and we drank it once fair. So
there's no like mini fridge in there?
There probably was. Like that was just a bad. I would be worried. I think there is a communal fridge actually, but you know, those Bobby Margaritas are a hot commodity. I didn't want mine to get too far from me just in case someone had its eyes on it. So, you know, I had to keep it close and therefore I had to keep it warm.
You gotta bring a cooler next time.
Well, I didn't know he was going to show up and like a boss. He had like multiple cases. He was handing them out to everyone. I mean, Bobby rolls the right way.
Must be nice to benefit from a Mackenzie handing out alcohol. I would sure love that, Sean. Anyway, USN chauffeur on Twitter, the last one. If you were granted commissioner for a day and your changes couldn't be reversed, what's the first most important thing you would address with the NHL? Could be anything with the CBA, rules, officiating, anything.
Yeah, I would do something that Gary Bettman or anyone who fills that post beyond Gary Bettman would never do. Because they have a great system for the owners. They have full cost certainty. But I would institute some kind of soft cap or luxury tax system that would allow the richer teams to, you know, attract more of the star players, frankly, because they could pay them more money. And it would allow more interesting transactional things that happen in the sport. And you could do it where the money that they exceed the cap by goes back to some of the poorer teams. You know, there is revenue sharing in the NHL, but I think you could use it to fuel revenue sharing. So it doesn't even necessarily hurt the smaller market teams as much. But, you know, there's no reason for the NHL to change the system. They have what they believe is a parity system because of the cap, and they have full protection of their owners that they're never going to spend more than 50% revenues on player salaries. So this is I don't see this changing, but that I would change it because I think the value of letting, whether it's the Leafs or the Rangers or whatever, Montreal, to spend more would be high, and I think it would make for more interesting off seasons and trade deadlines and the like.
Commissioner CJ in our future, maybe, who knows?
Commissioner CJ would be fired by the owners though for even trying to bring that to them, because the problem with that system is some owners, and again, it's going to be the ones who can afford it, are going to be spending a lot of money. And so it's probably not in the best interest of the league to do that. I think it would make more exciting.
Not to mention everyone at the SDPN, whether on Discord or any of us doing these shows, we would love that, and we would be texting you all the time for insight and stuff.
As long as you don't email me, I'll get back to you.
Very fair. And with that does it for the Monday edition of the Chris Johnston Show. CJ, go out and enjoy Florida before you have to actually go out and work in a hotel room, I guess, and wait for a GM to give you some insight.
I'm going to put on the sunglasses, but not because I'm hungover, just because there's lots of sun here.
I imagine. I am envious of you right now. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions for Ask CJ. On Thursday, we're going to do stick taps. By the way, just going to get this one out the way here. Congratulations to my alma mater, Concordia. They won the national championship in women's hockey for the first time in 23 years on Sunday. So a very early stick tap to Concordia University for that. We'll find other stick taps to give on our Thursday episode, and it'll be fun. I promise. Subscribe to our show wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe to all the other great shows on the SDPN network. For Siege, I'm Julian saying so long, and we'll see you on Thursday. Peace.
The Chris Johnston Show. Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JKMcKenzie.